Often when I post these cases as videos online, I'm asked the simple question, are they true? Usually my answer is quite cagey. The stories are fictionalized in that names, sometimes locations, and certain details are altered to protect identities and to stop the authorities from finding out that the information is being shared online. Sharing the details in this animated format on what most assume to be a scary story channel always allows me to share details of things that are technically classified, because by sharing them in this way, they can be disguised as fiction. Today, though, I'll share a story that will give you some insight into just how much truth there is to my words. You'll not find records of this case online, but the location and my description of it can be checked in a few keystrokes. In fact, I invite you to look the place up on Google to check what I tell you. What you'll find if you do is that the place is completely real and appears just as I described. You'll also find that the place is now completely closed to the public. What you need to ask yourself is, why? It could be that the authorities believe it to be dangerous, but then many other very similar places in very similar locations are open. It may be because they wish to preserve the place for its historical significance, but if that's true, then why are so many other places of similar age and significance open to the public? Or maybe, just maybe, it's for the reasons I'm about to tell you. Check the facts yourself and then decide what you believe. The site I'm referring to is a cave in the Cresswell Crags in the UK, a cave system used by Ice Age humans as shelter. The specific cave entrance that I'm referring to featured in a case of mine. It's special because the walls of the cave are almost entirely covered with thousands upon thousands of apotropaic marks. If you don't know the phrase apotropaic, it's a word from Greek derivation. It means to turn away. The markings that cover the entire wall of this cave are warning marks, symbol signs, and powerful magical markers intended as warnings, either to tell others to stay out or to keep whatever's in there trapped within. When I was first asked to take this case, one that concerned the disappearance of a team of researchers and many others in and around the cave area, I was intrigued. My background studies in folklore and the history of black magic allowed me to decode some of the symbols I was shown in the photographs I was sent almost immediately. There were deeply carved inscriptions of the letters P and M, which taken together in formation form the initials of Pace Maria. There's also huge and smaller V symbols, all of which are calls to the Virgin Mary for protection against evil, demons, witches, and even the devil himself. Similar symbols can be found scratched into the exterior walls of churches and on gravestones across the UK, though never in such numbers and not usually in random rock formations. Other symbols etched into the rocks are examples of more esoteric magic. For example, the box-like shapes known in some circles as Hermes cubes, or the intricate repetitive structures resembling plans of a labyrinth or maze known as Daedalus blocks, named after the father of Icarus and builder of the labyrinth, in which the mythical Minotaur was kept. These symbols are specifically used to trap or contain evil. The markings then, in far greater numbers than any other site in the British Isles, constitute a warning. But against what? Whilst they're listed on the missing persons registers and are therefore part of the official record, the 34 people whose disappearances are thought to have been linked to this cave are not attached to the site in any public documentation. That part of their stories has been suppressed, as was the fact that the individuals on that list are of all different ages and come from across the country and even beyond, but are definitely linked. They all come from the same 3 families. It was the last detail that brought me to the case. The first 3 people to go missing were 2 experienced cavers and a folklore and religion expert who would enter the cave system on a research project, specifically to view this particular cave. They were never heard from again. That, of course, could have been an accident. Some explosion or flood in the cave system, a collapse, or a release of gas that tragically claimed their lives. Those disappearances, tragic as they were, could probably be explained. What could not be explained was the subsequent disappearances of their family members, some of whom had never seen the caves, were estranged from this relative, or lived outside the UK. Take, for example, Mark Lennon, one of the cavers recruited to escort the researchers into the cave. He went missing in January of 2018 in the caves themselves. A month later, his wife Audra was reported missing. His brother Tony, 2 weeks after that, his cousins Andrew and Tina, both of whom lived in separate parts of the UK. His mother Dina and her partner vanished in early 2019, and even his estranged son Ben, who at the time lived in southern Spain, was reported missing in mid-2019. In every case, there are vehicle records, abandoned cars, hotel records, or CCTV images that prove the family members were in the area of the cave. In the case of Mr. Leenan's son Ben, a flight and a train were taken from Spain in order that he come close to the spot. He was last filmed at a cafe 2 miles from the entrance to the cave at around 10 in the evening. He was never seen again. It wasn't just Leenan's family either. In the months following the disappearance of Sue Langley, the professor who had accompanied the cavers, 8 individual members of her family are known to have traveled entirely independently of each other to the area around the cave. None of them have been seen since. 4 of their vehicles were found abandoned on the edges of woodlands that surround the entrance to the cave system. What my employers wanted to know was what force, what compulsion was drawing these individuals to the spot, and whether they, despite having no motivation to do so, had as suspected entered the cave system for some unknown reason. Had they been called there, and if so, what was calling them? Of course, there was only one way for me to find out. In early 2020, I found myself standing in the mouth of the cave, surrounded by markings stretching back almost 1,000 years. Made by medieval hands as a warning to those that come after. What was not mentioned, what is not mentioned even now, and is not visible on the video scans of the cave markings available online, is that as you pass the entrance, as you follow the tunnel further and deeper into the bowels of the earth, the markings get older. Some of the paintings and etchings that I'd seen and recorded are not hundreds of years old, but thousands. Some areas of the most primitive design and show only stick figures standing before collections of jagged, threatening lines. An image that, though crude, I can confirm is hideously accurate. For after 3 hours of difficult descent, past these markings and far from the light of the sun, myself and 2 colleagues were surprised to find another source of light illuminating the corner of a cavern up ahead. From what source this orange glow this far underground could have come, we did not know. And though it would have only taken us a moment to turn the corner around the obscuring bend to see what was causing the glow, measurements of temperature, pressure, and diminished oxygen meant that we decided against it. Assessing the risk of investigating and checking our instruments and gauges, we decided that the best option would be to return later with professional seismologists, particularly as the heat had increased to sweltering levels. It was only as I photographed the wall onto which the strain light was projected, however, that I found reason never to return. For in the clarity of the viewfinder, the zoom function assisting where my eyes never could, I saw something other than light and rock. Instead, I saw teeth, rows and rows of back-curved fangs protruding out from the walls which, shown to glow in the orange half-light, were moist and it seemed to me not rock at all, but soft and elastic like skin or flesh. The teeth arching forward from these surfaces were arranged in circular rows, so that to walk into that tunnel was to be surrounded by them on every side. What I had photographed was a mouth and a throat. Rushing out from the cave at as great speed as I could, my colleagues and I hit the surface, breathless and terrified. Almost as soon as my feet landed on the surface, I heard my phone ring. The message it alerted me to brought with it some measure of clarity. 4 hours later, I was sitting at the bedside of a man named Michael Leenan, the younger brother of Ben and son of Mark. He had just that morning woken from a coma. He had, he told me, been on his way to the Cresswell Crogs, driving at stupidly high speed towards them when he had skidded, careened off the road, and collided with a tree. He had been unconscious since and had only now woken. When I asked why he was making his way to the caves in the first place, his eyes filled with tears. Because he is there. He calls to us. All the time he calls and we must go to him. We must. When I explained that to go to him meant probably never coming back and showed him the photograph of what I had seen below the surface, he simply shook his head. I told him over and over that to go there was dangerous, and that not only should he not go, but he didn't need to. He again burst into tears. "You don't understand," he said through a wash of tears. "He wants me now. Yes, now. But time isn't important. We all go to him in the end." You can find information about the Witchmark Cave in the Cresswell Krogs online. You can even view some of the etching in a virtual tour. You cannot, however, visit the site. Ever. The cave bearing the markings added to in 2020 by representatives from a number of major religions, though those additions do not show up in the images, was closed.